The message arrived with a burst of static filled with desperation. All of them, Admiral Carter said flatly. Permission to bring them home. But what came next would shatter Earth's fragile peace and test humanity's very soul. Commander Lisa Wang's voice cut through the void from the edge of known space. It wasn't a standard report. Her transmission crackled with interference, each word strained through layers of cosmic static. She spoke of systematic exile, not exploration. Her words painted a detailed picture of ships drifting beyond coalition borders. These weren't scientific vessels. They were transports with failing life support systems. Children were dying in cramped quarters meant for short journeys. The coalition had a policy. They labeled species as genetically inferior or culturally incompatible. These weren't military targets. They were civilizations deemed unworthy of inclusion. Whole populations were being removed from coalition space. Wang described the process. Ships would arrive at border worlds with official documentation. They carried families, scientists, artists, people who had lived peacefully within coalition territory for generations. They were given no warning before removal. Her voice tightened when she mentioned the children. The youngest couldn't survive the journey conditions. Life support was failing on multiple vessels. Emergency distress signals went unanswered by coalition patrols. This wasn't discovery. It was extermination disguised as bureaucracy. The coalition used clinical language to describe horrific actions. Population relocation meant sentencing beings to slow suffocation in deep space. Her final plea reached Captain Jake Morrison aboard the ESV Guardian. She transmitted coordinates for 47 ships. Their locations were scattered across 3 sectors. All were drifting without power or hope. Wang's voice broke as she described the conditions. Adults rationing their own oxygen for children. Engineers trying to repair systems with no spare parts. Medical teams watching patients die from preventable causes. She included sensor data in her transmission. It showed life signs fading across multiple vessels. The oldest and youngest were going first. Some ships had already gone completely silent. Earth now held a secret that could shatter its galactic standing. The Coalition's peaceful image was a carefully constructed lie. Their expansion wasn't about bringing light to dark places. It was about removing anything that didn't fit their perfect system. Morrison listened to the entire transmission twice. His bridge crew sat in stunned silence. They had believed in the Coalition's mission. Now they faced evidence of calculated cruelty on an unimaginable scale. The transmission ended abruptly. Static filled the speakers once more. The silence that followed felt heavier than any battle. Every officer on the bridge understood what they'd just heard. They weren't just listening to a distress call. They were hearing the truth about their galactic neighbors. The Coalition wasn't what they claimed to be. Their mercy was selective. Their tolerance had limits. Morrison kept the coordinates on his main display. 47 ships, thousands of lives, all waiting for someone to answer. All counting on a humanity they'd never met. He opened a channel to Earth Command. The decision would have to be made quickly. Those ships had limited time. Their life support systems were failing by the hour. The ESV Guardian could reach some of them. But rescuing them meant defying the Galactic Coalition. It meant potentially endangering Earth's standing. It meant choosing mercy over politics. Morrison prepared his report. He would forward Wang's transmission verbatim. Earth would have to decide quickly. There were children breathing their last in the dark between stars. The Coalition's exiles weren't random selections. They followed specific bureaucratic protocols designed to eliminate perceived threats. 3 distinct species faced calculated eradication under cold administrative terms. Each possessed biological traits the Coalition viewed as dangerous deviations from their ideal. Their differences became justification for systematic removal from civilized space. The process was documented in official memoranda with clinical detachment. The Zilani were aquatic beings requiring submerged environments. Their biology operated on ammonia-based chemistry rather than oxygen. Coalition medical teams declared their respiratory systems incompatible with standard life support. They needed constant immersion in specially treated saltwater solutions. Their skin secreted protective membranes that dissolved in dry air. Even their communication used low-frequency hydrosonics rather than audible speech. The Karathi consisted of crystalline life forms with silicon-based biology. Their structures grew and adapted through mineral absorption. Coalition engineers labeled their physical forms incompatible with standard habitats. They required specific atmospheric compositions to prevent crystalline decay. Their nourishment came from mineral-rich solutions rather than organic matter. Even their movement patterns differed from carbon-based life. The Vexi operated through interconnected empathic networks. They shared thoughts and emotions across short distances without technology. Coalition security experts saw this as a threat to centralized control. Their neural patterns created spontaneous consensus without hierarchy. They could sense deception and hidden agendas in other species. Their very existence challenged systems built on compartmentalized information. Each species received official classification as genetically non-conformant. Their cultures were labeled incompatible with coalition values. The documentation cited public health concerns and security risks. Scientific committees provided supporting evidence for exclusion. Legal teams drafted the expulsion orders with precise terminology. The Zilani were removed from their ocean worlds first. Their underwater cities were deemed too alien for integration. They were described as potential biological contaminants in water systems. Their need for specialized environments was framed as unreasonable accommodation. The Karathi faced expulsion from their crystalline habitats. Their mineral consumption patterns were labeled economically unsustainable. Their non-organic biology was declared too different for medical compatibility. They were portrayed as potential structural hazards in standard facilities. The Vexi encountered the most aggressive removal efforts. Their empathic abilities were classified as psychological weapons. Coalition psychologists wrote papers on their potential for mass manipulation. Their natural communication was described as invasive mental surveillance. All three species had lived peacefully within coalition space for generations. They had established communities and contributed to local economies. Their children attended schools alongside other species. Their artists and scientists had achieved recognition across multiple systems. The exclusion orders came without warning. Families were given hours to gather essential belongings. They were escorted to transport ships by armed security teams. The vessels were equipped with minimal life support systems. No destination coordinates were provided in the manifests. These weren't refugees seeking shelter. They were survivors of institutionalized persecution. Their only crime was biological difference in an empire demanding conformity. The coalition had decided some forms of life were worth less than others. Their diversity became their death sentence. The paperwork was perfect. The morality was absent. Commander Wang's footage showed the true cost of coalition policy. The refugee ships weren't vessels. They were floating graveyards drifting in the void. Each hull contained thousands of lives slowly fading away. The footage arrived in raw segments without commentary or editing. The first images showed overcrowded corridors. Beings packed against each other with minimal personal space. The air recyclers strained to process the excessive carbon dioxide. Environmental systems were operating at 200% capacity. Warning lights flashed across engineering control panels. Life support indicators displayed critical failure warnings. Oxygen levels dropped steadily across multiple decks. Carbon dioxide scrubbers were failing from constant overload. Power conduits showed dangerous fluctuations in energy flow. Emergency backups had already been depleted days earlier. Children stared through cracked viewports with hollow eyes. Their small forms pressed against the reinforced glass. They watched stars drift past without comprehension. Some had stopped crying hours ago. Their energy reserves were nearly exhausted. Elders huddled in makeshift shelters throughout the ships. Their metabolic rates slowed to conserve energy. Many had entered voluntary hibernation states. Medical teams moved among them with limited supplies. They prioritized the young despite protocol. Engineering teams worked on failing systems around the clock. They cannibalized non-essential components for repairs. Every decision meant sacrificing one system to save another. They prioritized oxygen over temperature control, life support over communication arrays. The footage showed specific technical details. Zilani ships maintained high humidity levels at great energy cost. Their ammonia-based air mixtures required specialized filtering. Karathi vessels showed mineral depletion in crystal growth chambers. Vexi ships had empathic dampeners running at maximum capacity. Medical bays overflowed with patients suffering from oxygen deprivation. Doctors rationed medications using triage protocols. The youngest and oldest were fading first. Some species required specialized treatments humans didn't understand. Food synthesizers operated on emergency power settings. They produced nutrient paste from recycled organic matter. Water recyclers filtered waste through overtaxed systems. Some ships reported contamination in drinking supplies. The Coalition had equipped these ships with just enough to reach the edge of their space. The calculations were precise and cruel. Life support would fail shortly after crossing into uncharted territory. The exiles would die without contaminating Coalition worlds. This was institutional elimination disguised as relocation policy. The bureaucracy called it efficient resource management. The reality was systematic eradication of inconvenient life forms. The ships were designed to be their tombs. Each vessel represented an entire culture facing extinction. Their art, science, and history would vanish with them. The Coalition wasn't just killing individuals. They were erasing civilizations from galactic memory. The silence between Wang's transmissions felt heavier than the images. The only sounds were straining engines and failing systems. Occasional static bursts interrupted the dreadful quiet. Then more sensor data would stream through showing life signs fading. Human engineers analyzing the footage calculated time remaining. Most ships had less than 72 hours of functional life support. Some would fail within the next 12 hours. The countdown had already begun before Earth received the transmission. The Coalition's solution to diversity was slow, silent death in the vacuum between stars. They called it policy. The footage called it genocide. Admiral Ben Carter stood before Earth's Leadership Council. His posture showed the weight of the decision they faced. He placed a data crystal on the podium. The room's lighting dimmed automatically. Council members leaned forward in their seats. He played the raw footage without introduction. No commentary, no analysis, just the images from Commander Wang's transmission. The screen showed children pressing against viewports. Their large eyes reflected the stars outside. Some breathed in shallow, rapid patterns. The room fell completely silent. Counselor Williams looked away from the screen. Her hands tightened on the armrests. Counselor Chen leaned forward, face grim. He studied the technical readouts overlaying the images. Life support percentages dropped steadily. Trade sanctions were the first concern raised. The Coalition controlled 70% of human trade routes. Cutting access would cripple supply chains. Medical supplies would run short within months. Food production would drop by 40%. Armed retaliation was discussed next. Coalition warships outnumbered human vessels 20-1. Their technology surpassed anything Earth possessed. Defense analysts projected total defeat within hours of conflict. Orbital colonies would be vulnerable targets. Earth's outer colonies faced immediate danger. They relied on Coalition protection from raiders and pirates. Without that shield, settlements would be overrun. Evacuation plans didn't exist for that scale of retreat. Millions would be stranded. Economic collapse was almost certain. Markets would panic at the first sign of conflict. Currency values would plummet. Supply shortages would trigger civil unrest. Military resources would be stretched too thin to respond. Diplomatic isolation would follow. Allied species would distance themselves from Earth. Communication networks would be severed. Scientific cooperation would end. Humanity would lose generations of research and development. Council members voiced these concerns in tense, measured tones. They didn't shout or argue. They stated facts like surgeons listing complications. Each point was another reason to turn away. Each justification built a wall of practicality. Carter listened without interruption. He watched the footage continue to play. A Zilani child drifted in a nutrient tank. Its gills fluttered weakly. The oxygen saturation indicator flashed red. His voice cut through the fear. Earth didn't become great by abandoning people. The words hung in the air. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He reminded them of Earth's history. Plagues where neighbors helped neighbors. Disasters where strangers risked everything. Wars where enemies became allies through shared humanity. He pointed at the screen. Those are people, not policy problems. His finger tapped the podium. We either help them or become what we despise. The vote was called without further discussion. Hands rose slowly at first, then more quickly. The count wasn't close. The decision was made. Carter nodded once. He collected the data crystal. The course was set. Rescue operations would begin immediately. Ships would launch within the hour. There would be no turning back, no second chances, no negotiations with the Coalition. Earth had chosen its path based on conscience rather than convenience. The council chamber emptied quickly. Officials moved to their stations. Emergency protocols activated across the planet. Defense grids went to heightened alert status. Carter walked to the communications center. He would personally oversee the operation. Every ship would receive direct orders from his office. No bureaucratic delays, no secondary approvals. Humanity's future in the galaxy now hung on this single choice. They had bet their survival on doing the right thing. The coalition would respond. The consequences would be severe, but for now, rescue ships were launching. Thousands of lives depended on their speed. Carter watched the first vessels streak into orbit. Their engines glowed against the dark sky. Ambassador Tekmar arrived without warning. His shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere on a precise trajectory. No advanced communication, no diplomatic protocols. He entered the council chamber alone. His features were alien and unreadable. The air felt cold around him. He stood before the council without greeting them. His posture was rigid and angular. His movements were economical and precise. He placed a data slate on the podium. The device activated with a soft glow. His terms were delivered like machine code. Each syllable was measured and flat. No emotion colored his words. He spoke in galactic standard with perfect accentless pronunciation. The first term was complete trade embargo. All coalition trade routes would close to human vessels. No goods would pass between their spaces. No resources would be exchanged. The embargo would begin in 60 standard rotations. The second term was withdrawal of protection. Coalition patrols would leave human space immediately. All defense agreements were terminated. Outposts and colonies would be undefended. Border zones would become open territory. The third term was classification as hostile. Earth would be labeled a non-aligned world. This meant no diplomatic recognition, no embassy protections, no communication channels. Essentially, non-existent to the galactic community. The consequences were detailed with clinical precision. Human ships would be barred from coalition space. Any vessel crossing the border would be destroyed. No warnings would be issued. No exceptions would be made. Colony worlds would face increased raider activity. Pirates would know they were unprotected. Settlement defenses were inadequate for sustained attacks. Evacuation would be impossible for remote outposts. Economic collapse was guaranteed. 70% of human trade flowed through coalition routes. Alternative paths were longer and more dangerous. Shipping costs would triple. Shortages would begin within weeks. Scientific cooperation would cease. Research data would be locked away. Medical advancements would be withheld. Technological sharing would end. Human science would stagnate without external input. Diplomatic isolation would be total. Allied species would cut ties to avoid coalition anger. Communication networks would be severed. Information flow would slow to a trickle. Humanity would become deaf and blind in the galaxy. The terms were non-negotiable. There would be no discussions, no appeals, no compromise. The decision was absolute and immediate. Tekmar finished speaking. He retrieved his data slate. He turned without waiting for response. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. The doors hissed shut behind him. The council sat in stunned silence. They had expected anger. They had prepared for negotiations. They hadn't anticipated this cold finality. The silence felt heavier than any threat. It was the silence of absolute isolation, the silence of a galaxy turning its back, the silence of becoming alone against everything. Humanity would stand without allies in a hostile universe. They had chosen conscience over convenience. Now they faced the consequences of that choice. The coalition had shown its true nature through bureaucratic cruelty. Tekmar's shuttle lifted from the landing pad. It ascended through the atmosphere without ceremony. Its engines left no visible trail. It simply vanished into the starry blackness. The council remained seated for a long time. They watched the empty sky where the shuttle had been. They understood what had just happened. There would be second chances. No opportunities to reconsider. Earth was now truly alone. The coalition had drawn its line with brutal clarity. They would enforce their policies without mercy. Humanity's future would be whatever they could make of it without help. The vote had been taken days earlier. The course had been set. Now they faced the reality of that decision. Protection was gone. Trade was ending. Recognition was withdrawn. They had the refugees. They had their conscience. They had each other. It would have to be enough against the coming storm. What began as 47 ships quickly became 63. The transports kept appearing at the edge of sensor range. More exiles heard the rescue broadcast and altered course. Earth's ports strained under the sudden influx. The sheer scale of the operation overwhelmed existing infrastructure within days. Port authorities reported complete gridlock at major spaceports. Landing bays designed for 20 ships now held 50. Maintenance crews worked around the clock. Fuel lines stretched to breaking point. Customs and immigration systems crashed under the processing load. Emergency protocols were activated across 6 continents. Military bases opened their hangars to civilian traffic. Each species required environments humans had never engineered. Standard human habitats were useless. Some were actively dangerous to the refugees. Engineers faced biological requirements that defied conventional construction methods. Life support systems had to be completely redesigned from first principles. The Zilani needed constant moisture levels exceeding 90% humidity. Their skin required specific salt concentrations in the air. Dry environments caused immediate tissue damage. Their living spaces needed permanent water features for submersion. Standard building materials deteriorated under these conditions. Corrosion became a constant problem. Karathi refugees insisted on specific mineral compositions in their quarters. Their crystalline structures absorbed nutrients through direct contact. Flooring had to contain precise mineral blends. Air filtration systems needed specialized particulate collectors. Temperature control was critical for crystal integrity. Even lighting required specific wavelengths for their health. Vexi environments needed dampeners to prevent empathic overload. Their neural networks connected spontaneously in close quarters. Standard human emotional frequencies caused feedback loops. Soundproofing materials had to block specific psychic frequencies. Layouts required greater distances between living units. Even color schemes affected their stability. Dr. Maria Santos and Dr. Kevin Taylor began mapping these impossible requirements. They converted abandoned facilities into temporary habitats. Old submarine bases became Zilani housing. Mineral mines were repurposed for Karathi needs. Remote research stations housed Vexi refugees away from population centers. They faced constant technical challenges. Humidity control systems failed regularly. Mineral deposition clogged ventilation shafts. Empathic interference disrupted power grids. Each solution created 3 new problems. Engineering teams worked in rotating shifts without rest. Supply chains broke under the strain. Specialized equipment had to be manufactured from scratch. Water treatment facilities operated beyond design limits. Mineral extraction increased 500%. Energy consumption reached critical levels across multiple grids. Medical teams reported new health issues daily. Zilani developed skin lesions from imperfect humidity control. Karathi showed crystal fracturing from mineral imbalances. Vexi suffered neural feedback from emotional contamination. Each case required customized treatments using unfamiliar medicine. This wasn't just providing shelter. It was planetary-scale bioengineering under crisis conditions. Every decision affected thousands of lives. Every mistake could cause irreversible harm. The learning curve was steep and unforgiving. Failure meant watching beings suffer from well-intentioned errors. The 63 ships became 72, then 89. The flow of refugees continued despite coalition threats. Earth's commitment was being tested through sheer numbers. Each new arrival added another layer of complexity. Each species brought unique requirements that challenged human technology. Engineers started calling it the infinite problem. Solve one issue and 2 more appeared. The systems were too interconnected for simple fixes. Everything affected everything else. Stability felt impossible to achieve. Progress was measured in small adjustments rather than grand solutions. Human standards of living were meaningless to these refugees. Each species operated on biological principles foreign to Earth. Their basic needs defied human architectural conventions. Standard housing solutions could literally kill the beings they meant to save. Good intentions weren't enough against biological reality. Zilani skin required constant hydration at precise salinity levels. Without it, their epidermal layers cracked and blied within hours. Their respiratory systems processed ammonia-based atmospheres. Standard human air mixtures acted like poison to their lungs. Even the lighting in their quarters needed specific ultraviolet wavelengths for vitamin synthesis. Their sleeping areas required complete submersion tanks with controlled current flows. Temperature variations of more than 2 degrees caused metabolic shock. Karathi crystals needed specific mineral feeds every 6 hours. Their structural integrity depended on constant mineral absorption. Without precise elemental compounds, their forms developed stress fractures. Their living spaces required mineral-infused surfaces for direct contact. Air quality needed microscopic mineral particulates for respiratory intake. Temperature stability was critical. Sudden changes caused crystalline shattering. Even ambient humidity affected their crystalline matrix stability. Vexi neural networks required dampeners to prevent psychic feedback loops. Standard human emotional frequencies caused neural overload. Their quarters needed specialized shielding against empathic leakage. Sound frequencies above certain decibels triggered involuntary network connections. Lighting conditions affected their psychic stability. Certain colors caused synaptic crosstalk. Their personal spaces required greater physical separation to prevent accidental bonding. Even electrical fields from standard power systems interfered with their mental processes. Human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to create viable habitats. They converted existing structures with radical modifications. Old aquatic research facilities became Zilani settlements. Mineral processing plants were retrofitted for Karathi needs. Remote scientific outposts housed Vexi communities away from emotional interference. The collaboration faced constant challenges. Language barriers complicated technical discussions. Measurement systems didn't translate between species. Engineering principles operated on different physical assumptions. Each solution required testing on small groups first. Failure meant immediate physiological consequences. They developed new construction techniques. Solani habitats used specialized sealants that resisted constant moisture. Karathi quarters incorporated mineral diffusion systems into walls and floors. Vexi buildings employed psychic damping materials never used in human architecture. Each innovation came through trial and painful error. Medical teams monitored the refugees constantly. They treated Zilani skin lesions from imperfect humidity control. They stabilized Karathi crystals with emergency mineral injections. They calmed Vexi neural overload with empathic suppressants. Each treatment taught them more about alien biology. The engineers worked in continuous shifts. They modified life support systems in real time. They adjusted environmental controls based on medical feedback. They rebuilt entire sections when designs proved inadequate. The learning process was constant and demanding. Failure wasn't an option. Each miscalculation meant suffering and potential death. A 2% drop in humidity could hospitalize dozens of Zilani. Incorrect mineral blends could fracture Karathi crystals beyond repair. Inadequate psychic shielding could permanently damage Vexi neural pathways. The human teams pushed their own limits. They learned to think in alien biological terms. They adapted their engineering approaches to foreign requirements. They embraced solutions that defied conventional wisdom. Their success was measured in stable vital signs and reduced medical emergencies. Every day without catastrophe was a small victory. Every solved problem revealed 3 new challenges. The work continued without pause. Tekmar's threat became reality within days of his departure. Coalition trade routes shifted away from human space. Merchant ships approaching standard lanes were turned back without explanation. Automated beacons redirected traffic around human-controlled systems. The change happened swiftly and without negotiation. Supply lines to outer colonies began failing immediately. Cargo ships scheduled for resupply never arrived at their destinations. Colonies reported critical shortages within the first week. Medical supplies ran low on frontier worlds. Food reserves dwindled without fresh deliveries. Replacement parts for life support systems became unavailable. Colony ships expecting protection found themselves exposed. Coalition patrol vessels abandoned their regular routes. Pirate activity increased along unprotected shipping lanes. Raider ships appeared near undefended outposts. Colonial defense grids were insufficient against organized attacks. Emergency distress signals went unanswered by former allies. Communication channels with allied species went completely silent. Diplomatic frequencies showed only static. Cultural exchange programs were terminated without notice. Scientific research collaborations were abruptly discontinued. Data streams from shared observatories ceased transmission. Even civilian entertainment networks blocked human access. Humanity found itself alone in a suddenly hostile galaxy. The coalition had erased 70 years of integration in 7 days. Trading partners became strangers overnight. Military allies became potential adversaries. Scientific collaborators became information black holes. Every connection had been severed with bureaucratic efficiency. Earth's leadership realized they had bet their species' future on principle. The economic impact was immediate and severe. Currency values plummeted across human markets. Resource allocation systems faced unprecedented strain. Manufacturing sectors slowed without imported materials. Unemployment rates climbed as trade-dependent industries contracted. The psychological effect was equally significant. Citizens faced the reality of complete isolation. Generations had grown up within a connected galaxy. Now they faced the silence of being cut off. The uncertainty created widespread anxiety. Social cohesion was tested by growing fear. Military planners prepared for worst-case scenarios. Defense grids were activated around critical infrastructure. Fleet deployments were reorganized for perimeter defense. Colony evacuation plans were drafted, though impossible to implement. The military faced threats from all directions without coalition support. Scientific progress faced immediate setbacks. Research projects relying on galactic cooperation stalled. Technological advancements from shared knowledge ceased. Medical research lost access to alien biological data. Engineering innovations slowed without cross-species collaboration. Human science was forced to continue alone. The silence from coalition space was more frightening than any attack. It was the silence of absolute abandonment, the silence of being erased from galactic records, the silence of becoming invisible to former allies, the silence of facing unknown dangers without support. Humanity had chosen conscience over convenience. Now they faced the consequences of that choice. Their colonies were vulnerable. Their economy was weakened. Their technology was isolated. Their people were afraid. The coalition had shown how quickly protection could be withdrawn. The reality was colder than the threat. Tekmar's words had been precise and measured. The actual isolation was absolute and unforgiving. There were no exceptions, no compromises, no last-minute reprieves. The galaxy had turned its back completely. Earth's leaders monitored the silent channels. They watched the empty trade routes. They read the reports from struggling colonies. They understood the scale of their decision. They had chosen to save others at the cost of their own security. The price was being paid across human space. The silence continued. No further communication came from the coalition. No explanations were offered. No negotiations were possible. The separation was total and permanent. Humanity was truly alone against whatever might come next. As engineers stabilized the survival issues, scientists began examining the refugee technologies. They weren't primitive systems. They operated on principles unknown to human science. These species weren't less advanced than the coalition. They were differently advanced. Their knowledge had developed along separate technological paths. The Karathi quantum computing capabilities defied known physics. Their crystalline processors performed calculations at impossible speeds. They manipulated quantum states in ways human scientists considered theoretical. Their systems could model entire battlefields in real time. They predicted enemy movements before they happened. Their technology made coalition computing look primitive by comparison. The coalition had exiled them for technological superiority. Their quantum systems became essential for Earth's defense planning. Zilani biotechnology showed disease-curing potential that revolutionized medicine. Their understanding of genetic therapy could extend human lifespans by decades. They manipulated biological systems with precision human science had never achieved. Their bioships could regenerate damage during combat. Their medical knowledge treated conditions previously considered incurable. They refused to send soldiers for coalition wars, valuing peace over conflict. This challenged the coalition's war-focused culture. Their biological expertise became humanity's greatest medical advantage. Vexi empathic networks offered new approaches to mental health. They treated trauma, depression, and neural disorders that plagued humanity for centuries. Their abilities weren't just emotional reading. They provided galaxy-wide intelligence gathering without technology. Their network became a carrier wave for spreading truth across the galaxy. The coalition labeled them psychic spies and banished them when they reported coalition crimes. Their empathic capabilities exposed systematic deception on an institutional level. These exiles held knowledge the coalition had tried to erase. Their technologies threatened the established power structures. The coalition leadership felt endangered by their superiority. They accused them of hoarding secrets to justify banishment. The very traits labeled inferior became humanity's greatest advantage. Human scientists worked alongside refugee experts to understand these systems. They faced conceptual barriers that required completely new thinking. Karathi quantum mechanics operated on non-human mathematical models. Zilani biology used chemical processes foreign to Earth life. Vexi empathy followed psychological principles beyond human experience. The collaboration produced breakthroughs weekly. Medical researchers developed new treatments using Zilani techniques. Engineers incorporated quantum computing into defense systems. Communications experts adapted Vexi networks for information sharing. Each discovery revealed more about the refugees' advanced knowledge. The coalition had feared these technologies for good reason. They challenged centralized control and military dominance. They offered alternatives to force and coercion. They emphasized cooperation over conflict. They valued life over destruction. These values directly opposed the coalition's foundation. Humanity gained more than technological advantages. They gained new ways of thinking about civilization. The refugees showed that progress didn't require conquest. Innovation could come through collaboration. Strength could mean protection rather than aggression. The very knowledge the coalition tried to eliminate became its greatest threat. The traits they called weaknesses became powerful assets. The species they discarded became invaluable allies. The technology they feared became their undoing. Military planners saw potential where politicians saw problems. Refugee technologies could be adapted for defense applications. Earth faced possible invasion with conventional inferior forces. Coalition ships outnumbered human vessels 20-1. Their weapon systems surpassed anything in human arsenals. Standard defense strategies offered no chance of success. Karathi quantum computers offered real-time battle calculations. Their crystalline processors predicted enemy movements before they occurred. They modeled entire battlefields with perfect accuracy. Coalition electronic warfare systems couldn't interfere with their operations. The technology provided immunity to standard jamming techniques. It allowed for precise coordination of complex maneuvers. Zilani bioships could regenerate damage during combat. Their organic hulls repaired themselves faster than weapons could destroy them. They grew new defenses as battles progressed. Their biological systems adapted to enemy weapons in real time. Standard coalition tactics became ineffective against living technology. Their manuals contained no countermeasures for self-repairing vessels. Vexi networks provided instant fleet-wide coordination. Their empathic links allowed simultaneous response across entire formations. Crews shared tactical awareness without communication delays. They sensed enemy intentions before orders were given. Coalition forces relied on slower electronic systems. Their reaction times couldn't match psychic coordination. Human engineers worked with refugee scientists on conversion projects. They integrated alien technologies into existing hull designs. The ESV Terra became the first hybrid warship. Its biohulls regenerated during combat. Karathi crystals provided quantum shielding against energy weapons. Vexi networks linked the crew for instant coordination. The collaboration faced significant technical challenges. Biological systems required different maintenance protocols. Crystal technology needed specialized power sources. Empathic networks demanded psychological screening for operators. Each solution created new integration problems. Engineering teams worked continuously to resolve compatibility issues. Sanctuary transformed from moral obligation to strategic necessity. The refugees provided technological advantages Earth desperately needed. Their knowledge became essential for survival. The alliance became mutually beneficial rather than charitable. Protection worked both ways between species. Humanity would defend itself with tools the coalition had thrown away. Their discarded technology became our greatest strength. Their exiled scientists became our most valuable advisors. Their different approaches to problem-solving revealed new possibilities. Military exercises demonstrated the combined system's effectiveness. Bioships regenerated from simulated attacks in minutes. Quantum computers predicted enemy maneuvers with perfect accuracy. Empathic networks coordinated fleet movements without communication delays. Coalition tactics were rendered obsolete by the new capabilities. The strategic conversion changed the balance of power. Earth no longer faced certain defeat against coalition forces. Their numerical advantage meant less against superior technology. Their conventional weapons struggled against adaptive defenses. Refugee technologies offered more than military applications. They represented a different approach to conflict. The emphasis was on protection rather than destruction, regeneration instead of attrition, coordination over domination. The coalition had feared these technologies for good reason. They challenged established military doctrine. They made mass fleets less relevant. They valued preservation over annihilation. Human engineers continued refining the integrated systems. Each iteration improved performance and reliability. The learning curve was steep but productive. Every problem solved revealed new capabilities. The tools the coalition discarded became their greatest threat. The species they exiled became their most formidable opponents. The technology they feared became their undoing. President Rodriguez faced the cameras with unprecedented resolve. Her expression showed no hesitation. The galaxy expected surrender. It received defiance instead. Coalition monitoring channels focused on the broadcast. They searched for signs of weakness or doubt. They found none in her steady gaze. Her words began quietly but with firm conviction. She reframed exiles as citizens. Criminals became survivors in her narrative. She described the coalition's actions with precise terminology. Systematic persecution, institutionalized discrimination, calculated extermination. Each phrase carried weight through its accuracy. Earth declared permanent sanctuary for all persecuted species. The offer extended to any being fleeing coalition oppression. The declaration included immediate citizenship rights, full legal protection, equal access to resources, participation in governance. The terms were absolute and without conditions. This wasn't just policy change. It was a redefinition of galactic values, strength through diversity instead of forced conformity, protection rather than exclusion, cooperation over domination. The principles challenged centuries of coalition doctrine. They offered an alternative to fear-based control. The speech lasted precisely 18 minutes. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't use dramatic gestures. Her calm delivery made the words more powerful. Each sentence was measured and deliberate. There were no pauses for applause or reaction. The message needed no theatrical emphasis. Coalition analysts monitored viewer reactions across human space. They expected divided opinions. They found overwhelming support instead. Human colonies showed unified approval. Refugee communities responded with visible relief. Even some coalition citizens expressed quiet agreement. The transmission went out on all frequencies. Military channels, civilian networks, emergency broadcast systems. There would be no recall, no opportunity to reconsider. The decision was permanent and absolute. Earth had committed to this path completely. Refugee ships already en route received priority clearance. Their approach vectors were updated instantly. Landing protocols were streamlined for rapid processing. Medical teams prepared for increased arrivals. Engineering crews expanded habitat facilities. The response was immediate and coordinated. Coalition officials received formal notification through diplomatic channels. The document cited specific violations of galactic rights. It listed evidence of systematic persecution. It included sensor data from exile ships. It ended with Earth's unconditional offer of protection. The tone was factual rather than confrontational. Human defense networks went to highest alert status. Fleet deployments shifted to protective formations. Colony worlds activated their emergency protocols. The military prepared for possible retaliation. They understood the risks of defiance. They accepted them without hesitation. The declaration triggered unexpected consequences immediately. Dozens of new refugee ships altered course toward human space. Their transmissions described similar persecution patterns. They came from species not previously documented. Their arrival confirmed the scale of coalition oppression. Earth's leadership monitored the situation through multiple channels. They watched the increasing refugee numbers. They tracked coalition military movements. They prepared for the coming confrontation. Their position was now public and irreversible. The galaxy had received their answer. The transmission ended with a simple statement. Earth would protect all who sought sanctuary. There would be no exceptions. There would be no negotiations. The principle was absolute. The commitment was permanent. The silence that followed felt different this time. It was the silence of determination rather than uncertainty. Humanity had chosen its path and would walk it without looking back. The first hybrid vessels rolled out of dry dock unlike anything seen before. Human engineering merged seamlessly with alien biological principles. These ships looked organic, pulsed with life, and unsettled traditionalists. Their surfaces shimmered with living tissue. Interior corridors felt more like biological pathways than metal hallways. Control panels responded to touch with organic sensitivity. The entire structure breathed like a living organism. Zilani biohulls could regenerate damage during combat. The living tissue repaired itself faster than weapons could destroy it. Battle scars sealed within minutes of impact. Damaged sections regrew with improved structural integrity. The ships adapted their defenses based on enemy weapon patterns. They became stronger with each engagement rather than weaker. Standard repair protocols were completely unnecessary. Karathi crystal systems provided quantum shielding against energy weapons. Their crystalline structures absorbed and redirected incoming fire. Energy beams dissipated across shimmering defensive screens. The shields adapted to different weapon frequencies automatically. They converted attack energy into usable power for the ship. Standard coalition weapons became practically useless against them. The technology operated on quantum principles beyond human physics. Vexi networks linked crew minds for instant tactical coordination. They shared thoughts and awareness without communication delays. The entire crew operated as a single conscious entity. Battlefield decisions happened at the speed of thought. Enemy movements were anticipated before they occurred. Tactical adjustments were implemented simultaneously across all stations. The coordination was perfect and immediate. The ESV Terra became the first living warship in human history. Admiral Morrison commanded from its organic bridge. The vessel responded to his thoughts as much as his commands. Its systems integrated all three Refuge technologies seamlessly. The biohull regenerated constantly. The crystal shields adapted continuously. The neural network connected everyone aboard. These vessels redefined space warfare completely. Traditional tactics became obsolete against living technology. Fleet maneuvers achieved perfect synchronization. Defensive systems evolved during combat. Offensive capabilities adapted to enemy weaknesses. The ships learned from each engagement and improved their performance. Coalition tactical manuals contained no countermeasures for living technology. Their strategies assumed static enemy capabilities. They planned for predictable responses and fixed defenses. Their weapons were designed against inorganic targets. Their electronic warfare systems couldn't affect biological components. Their intelligence gathering couldn't predict adaptive systems. The living warships changed combat dynamics fundamentally. Battles became conversations rather than calculations. The ships communicated through their actions and adaptations. They responded to enemy moves with organic creativity. Their strategies emerged from combined human and alien thinking. The fusion created something entirely new in warfare. Conventional military analysis struggled to categorize these vessels. They defied standard classification systems. Their capabilities shifted during engagements. Their performance improved under pressure. Their very existence challenged centuries of tactical doctrine. The coalition had no framework to understand what they faced. The ESV Terra represented more than military innovation. It symbolized the union of human and alien capabilities. It proved that cooperation could create superiority. The tools the coalition discarded became its greatest threat. The species they exiled became their most formidable opponents. The technology they feared became their undoing. Dr. Elena Vasquez discovered the coalition's greatest vulnerability. Their empire wasn't built on strength. It was constructed from controlled narrative and systematic deception. She found the weakness in refugee testimonies and captured data. The patterns were unmistakable once she started looking. Her analysis revealed consistent genocide records across multiple species. Silani, Karathi, and Vexi accounts all matched perfectly. Their stories described identical bureaucratic processes. The same forms, the same procedures, the same excuses. The coalition operated with brutal efficiency. Slavery operations followed predictable patterns. They used standard contract templates across different systems. Labor camps had identical management structures. Transport schedules used the same rotation systems. The bureaucracy of oppression was thoroughly documented. Extermination policies were recorded in their own communications. Internal memos discussed population control measures. Budget allocations funded relocation programs that were actually death sentences. Meeting minutes approved systematic removal of undesirable species. The evidence was all there in cold clinical language. Vasquez cross-referenced everything with captured coalition databases. She found purchase orders for transport ships with inadequate life support. She uncovered medical reports about expected mortality rates. She located engineering specifications for vessels designed to fail after specific distances. The planning was meticulous and horrifying. She prepared to weaponize this truth against the galaxy's largest lie. Her team compiled the evidence into a comprehensive package. They included sensor data from dying ships. They added personal testimonies from survivors. They incorporated official coalition documents that contradicted their public statements. The broadcast would expose decades of systematic genocide and slavery. It would show the coalition's true face to its own citizens. It would reveal the hypocrisy behind their peaceful facade. It would demonstrate how they maintained control through fear and deception. Vasquez coordinated with communications experts across human space. They prepared transmission protocols that could bypass coalition jamming. They scheduled the broadcast for maximum impact across multiple time zones. They ensured it would reach even the most remote colonies. The Vexi offered their empathic network as a distribution system. Their abilities could carry the emotional truth behind the facts. Coalition citizens wouldn't just hear the evidence. They would feel the suffering of the exiled species. They would experience the genocide directly through psychic connection. This wasn't conventional warfare. It was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. The truth would strike at the coalition's foundation. Their control depended on maintained illusions. Their power relied on manipulated perceptions. Their authority required unquestioning obedience. Vasquez knew the risks. The coalition would attempt to block the transmission. They would try to discredit the evidence. They would attack the messengers. But the truth was too comprehensive to suppress. The evidence was too overwhelming to deny. She gave the final authorization from her operations center. The broadcast began transmitting across all frequencies. It went out on civilian networks and military channels. It reached every corner of coalition space simultaneously. There was no warning, no build-up, just sudden undeniable truth. The transmission included everything: documentary evidence, personal accounts, technical data, emotional experiences. It presented the complete picture of coalition oppression. It showed the systematic destruction of entire civilizations. It revealed the calculated cruelty behind bureaucratic language. The truth became more destructive than any fleet. It undermined the coalition's moral authority. It shattered their carefully constructed narrative. It turned their citizens against them. It made their soldiers question their orders. It destroyed their foundation without firing a single shot. Vasquez monitored the initial reactions through intercepted communications. She saw the shock spreading across coalition networks. She read the confusion in military channels. She detected the anger growing in civilian populations. The truth was doing its work perfectly. The coalition's greatest weakness wasn't military. It was moral. Their empire couldn't survive exposure. Their control couldn't withstand truth. Their power couldn't endure honesty. Vasquez had found the weapon that would end their dominance without massive destruction. She had turned their own crimes against them. The silence after the transmission felt different this time. It was the silence of realization dawning across a galaxy. The Vexi offered something no technology could duplicate. Their empathic network operated beyond physical communication limits. It moved at the speed of thought itself. Coalition encryption meant nothing to psychic transmission. Their firewalls couldn't block emotional truth. Their signal jammers couldn't interrupt shared feelings. Their information control systems were useless against direct experience. Truth spread through the network at impossible speeds. It reached across light years in moments. Every connected being received the transmission simultaneously. Distance became irrelevant to communication. Time delays vanished from the equation. The network carried more than facts. It carried the emotional weight behind them. Coalition citizens felt the suffering of exiled species directly. They experienced the fear of children in failing ships. They shared the despair of parents watching their young die. They knew the confusion of beings torn from their homes. The emotional impact was immediate and overwhelming. Intellectual denial couldn't withstand visceral experience. Military units experienced the genocide they had enforced. Soldiers felt the terror of their targets. Officers shared the pain of families they had separated. Commanders understood the consequences of their orders. The psychological effect was devastating. Training and indoctrination collapsed under emotional reality. The Vexi network became the carrier wave for undeniable truth. It bypassed all coalition propaganda systems. It circumvented their media control apparatus. It reached directly into the minds of their citizens. The transmission couldn't be edited or filtered. It arrived as pure experiential data. For the first time, the galaxy felt what the coalition had done. The abstract concept of genocide became personal experience. The clinical term relocation became felt suffering. The bureaucratic language of policy became human tragedy. Understanding moved from intellectual to emotional. Compassion replaced political calculation. The network's reach was total and unavoidable. Isolated colonies received the transmission. Remote outposts experienced the truth. Even ships in deep space felt the impact. There were no safe distances, no shielded locations, no escape from the shared experience. Coalition control mechanisms began failing immediately. Military units refused further orders. Government officials questioned their actions. Ordinary citizens demanded answers. The foundation of their society cracked under the weight of truth. Their authority depended on maintained illusions. Those illusions were now shattered. The Vexi maintained the network's stability throughout. They modulated the emotional intensity to prevent overload. They filtered the experiences to ensure clarity. They provided context for the raw feelings. Their guidance made the truth bearable yet undeniable. They turned suffering into understanding without dilution. The psychological transformation was rapid and profound. People who had accepted coalition propaganda now rejected it. Those who had followed orders now questioned them. Individuals who had remained silent now spoke out. The change happened at a fundamental level. It wasn't persuasion. It was revelation. The network's impact extended beyond immediate awareness. It created permanent emotional connections between species. It fostered understanding that couldn't be undone. It built bridges of shared experience. The galaxy became smaller yet more connected. Differences became less important than common feelings. This was the weapon the coalition couldn't defend against. They had prepared for military attack. They had armored against technological warfare. They had no defense against emotional truth. Their greatest strength became their greatest weakness. Their control depended on separation. The network destroyed that separation completely. The silence after the transmission was different this time. It wasn't the silence of shock or confusion. It was the silence of collective understanding. Billions of beings across the galaxy shared the same realization simultaneously. They knew what had been done in their name. They felt the weight of that knowledge together. The crisis came to a head beneath the red sands of Mars. 8,000 Zilani refugees sheltered in pressurized habitats below the surface. Their underground city relied on artificial water reserves and specialized life support. The environment mimicked their homeworld's conditions with perfect humidity and temperature control. They had found temporary safety in the Martian tunnels. 3 coalition battleships descended through the thin atmosphere. Their approach was silent and deliberate. War Commander Vraus led the assault force from his flagship. His orders were clear and uncompromising. They would eliminate the refugee settlement as an example to others. The ships took position directly above the habitat entrances. Captain Amy Richards of the ESV Liberty moved to intercept immediately. Her small escort vessel was dramatically outgunned. She positioned herself between the battleships and the settlement. Her shields activated at maximum capacity. Weapons systems came online with a low hum. She prepared to engage despite the overwhelming odds. Admiral Morrison coordinated the defense from orbit. He deployed the upgraded weapon systems for the first time. Karathi quantum shields activated around key positions. Zilani biorepair systems initialized across defense platforms. The new technology represented humanity's best hope against superior forces. Every system showed green status readings. The living defenses of the ESV Terra engaged for the first time. The hybrid warship moved between the Liberty and the lead battleship. Its organic hull pulsed with contained energy. Crystal shields shimmered with quantum potential. The vessel represented the fusion of human and alien technology. It was unlike anything the Coalition had faced before. Coalition weapons faltered against quantum shields and bio-repair systems. Energy beams dissipated across shimmering defensive screens. The living hull regenerated damage faster than weapons could inflict it. Conventional tactics proved completely ineffective. The battleship's attacks were absorbed and converted into usable power. Their superiority vanished against adaptive technology. The 3 battleships were captured intact through coordinated action. Their systems were disabled by empathic interference. Boarding teams secured the vessels without major resistance. The crews surrendered when they realized their situation was hopeless. They were taken prisoner and transferred to secure facilities. Their ships became valuable sources of intelligence. The Martian habitats remained completely undamaged. The Zilani refugees continued their daily routines underground. They never felt the battle happening above them. Their safety had been preserved through decisive action. The defense proved Earth's commitment to their protection. The settlement became a symbol of successful integration. The captured vessels provided critical information about coalition operations. Their databases contained records of systematic persecution. Military protocols revealed standard extermination procedures. Communication logs showed the chain of command for genocide operations. The evidence was comprehensive and undeniable. It would become essential for future actions. Earth had demonstrated its resolve to protect the exiled species. The victory proved that sanctuary wasn't just a declaration. It was a commitment backed by capability and courage. The coalition learned that human space was defended territory. Their tactics of intimidation would no longer work here. The rules of engagement had changed permanently. The prisoners were treated according to galactic conventions. They received medical care and proper accommodations. Their treatment demonstrated the values they had opposed. They would face justice through proper legal channels. Their testimony would help expose coalition crimes. Their capture marked a turning point in the conflict. The truth broadcast triggered unexpected consequences throughout coalition space. Commander Morrison's transmission didn't just relay information. It carried the emotional weight of genocide through the Vexi network. Citizens experienced the suffering directly, rather than hearing about it. The impact was immediate and visceral. Coalition control began unraveling from within. Military units started questioning orders from Central Command. Soldiers felt the pain they had been ordered to inflict. Officers experienced the fear of displaced families. Fleet commanders shared the despair of exiled children. Their training couldn't withstand emotional truth. Their loyalty couldn't survive moral revelation. Entire battalions ceased offensive operations. Military units refused to engage Terra Alliance vessels. They recognized the refugee ships they had once persecuted. They saw the living technology they had been told to destroy. Their weapons remained silent against former targets. Some ships altered course to avoid confrontation. Others deliberately missed their targets during engagements. The discipline of the coalition military fractured completely. The Andromedan Federation declared independence from coalition control. Their council voted unanimously to sever ties. They expelled coalition officials from their territories. They opened their borders to refugee vessels. Their declaration cited systematic deception and genocide. They became the first major power to break away completely. Their example inspired other systems to follow. Century Republic ejected coalition officials and opened its borders. Their security forces escorted diplomatic personnel to waiting ships. They established safe corridors for refugee vessels. They shared intelligence with Terra Alliance commanders. Their actions demonstrated practical support beyond symbolic gestures. They provided material assistance to the growing resistance. Coalition war rooms filled with panicked, unanswered orders. Commanders shouted into silent communication channels. Battle plans went unexecuted by reluctant fleets. Situation maps showed widespread disobedience across sectors. The chain of command collapsed under moral weight. The infrastructure of control became useless against collective conscience. The Empire's authority dissolved from within its own ranks. Soldiers became citizens again rather than instruments of policy. Officers prioritized morality over obedience. Systems governed themselves according to local values. The central authority lost its power to compel action. The fear that sustained the coalition turned against it. Jake Morrison monitored the disintegration from the ESV Guardian. He watched coalition vessels stand down across multiple sectors. He read reports of systems declaring independence. He saw the military structure fragment into individual conscience. The truth had accomplished what weapons could not. His transmission to coalition command was brief and factual. It contained no gloating or celebration. It simply stated the observable reality. The response to their ultimatum was evident across the galaxy. Their control had ended because their morality had failed. The Empire built on lies couldn't survive exposure to truth. The defections continued accelerating. More systems joined the growing alliance. More military units switched allegiance. More citizens demanded accountability. The coalition's foundation crumbled under the weight of its crimes. Its power vanished like mist in sunlight. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had anticipated. Morrison's final message to War Commander Vrouse contained 7 words. They acknowledged the reality both men could see. They rejected further negotiation or explanation. The situation spoke for itself through actions rather than words. The response to aggression had been determined through unity and truth. The transmission ended without additional comment. 10,000 coalition ships descended on Sol system. It was the largest fleet assembly in recorded galactic history. Their formation stretched across the orbital planes like a metal cloud blocking the sun. Conventional analysis gave Earth 0 chance of survival. The statistics were brutally clear. Their numbers overwhelmed any possible defense. Their weapons could shatter planets. Their commanders expected quick surrender. Terra Alliance defenses activated in coordinated sequence. Orbital platforms hummed to life with blended technology. Human engineering supported Karathi quantum systems. Zilani biological components integrated seamlessly. The defense network represented unity rather than single-species capability. It operated on principles the Coalition couldn't comprehend. Coalition fire was absorbed and converted into Alliance power. Energy beams dissipated across quantum shielding. The living hulls of bioships regenerated damage instantly. Weapons designed for destruction became sources of renewal. Attack power fueled defense systems. The Coalition's strength became their weakness through technological reversal. Quantum warfare systems disrupted enemy coordination. Karathi crystal technology predicted fleet movements before they occurred. Formation patterns were anticipated and countered instantly. Communication channels were jammed through psychic interference. The Coalition's command structure fractured under perfect opposition. Their numerical advantage meant nothing against perfect coordination. The psychological weapon broadcast undeniably shattered Coalition morale. Dr. Vasquez's transmission reached every ship simultaneously. Soldiers saw the genocide they had enabled. Officers felt the suffering they had caused. The truth moved from intellectual concept to emotional reality. Their purpose collapsed under moral weight. War Commander Vrouse surrendered when boarding teams uncovered crime evidence. His flagship was breached by Alliance Marines. They found records of systematic extermination orders. They uncovered documentation of slavery operations. The evidence was comprehensive and undeniable. His command authority evaporated with each revealed document. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. Coalition ships powered down their weapon systems. Their crews awaited instructions from Alliance commanders. The transition happened without further violence. The shift from aggression to compliance was swift and complete. Earth's defense proved that unity could overcome overwhelming force. Cooperation defeated coercion. Protection triumphed over persecution. The Alliance had demonstrated that diverse species could achieve more together than any single civilization alone. The captured fleet became part of the solution rather than the problem. Their ships were repurposed for rescue operations. Their crews assisted with refugee transportation. Their technology was integrated into rebuilding efforts. The tools of conquest became instruments of salvation. The silence after battle felt different than before. It wasn't the silence of tension or fear. It was the silence of realization and change. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. Strength through diversity had defeated strength through domination. The Coalition's defeat was absolute and comprehensive. Their military power was neutralized. Their moral authority was destroyed. Their control over member species ended. Their empire collapsed from within under the weight of truth. The Battle of Earth proved that 10,000 ships couldn't defeat unity and truth. Numbers meant less than purpose. Technology meant less than morality. Force meant less than cooperation. The outcome redefined galactic power dynamics completely. The Alliance emerged stronger from the confrontation. Their systems had been tested under ultimate pressure. Their technology had performed beyond expectations. Their unity had remained solid under attack. Their future was secured through courage and principle. War Commander Vrouse faced justice through proper channels. His testimony would help document coalition crimes. His cooperation would ensure comprehensive accountability. His surrender marked the end of an era of oppression. The galaxy watched the aftermath with renewed hope. The overwhelming force had been defeated. The seemingly invincible empire had fallen. The impossible had been achieved through unity and truth. 5 years of transformation reshaped the galaxy. The Republic's council chamber now accommodated 300 species representatives. Each delegate possessed equal voting power regardless of military strength or economic output. The architecture reflected this new equality through circular seating arrangements and neutral design elements. Old coalition hierarchy was replaced by collaborative decision-making processes. The change wasn't merely political. It represented a fundamental shift in galactic values. Old prejudices didn't disappear overnight. Suspicion still lingered between former enemies. Cultural misunderstandings caused occasional diplomatic incidents. Economic disparities created tension between developed and developing systems. The repair process required constant effort and willingness to compromise. Healing generations of conflict demanded more than policy changes. It needed genuine commitment to understanding different perspectives. Silani engineers designed ocean cities with coral-inspired architecture. Their submerged metropolises blended organic and synthetic materials. The structures grew and adapted like living reefs. Human architects collaborated on pressure regulation systems. The cities became models of interspecies engineering. They demonstrated how different biological needs could be accommodated through creative design. These habitats represented physical proof of successful integration. Karathi scientists shared quantum physics with human students. Their crystalline teaching aids demonstrated complex concepts through light refraction. Classrooms became laboratories for cross-species education. Human mathematicians developed new notation systems to accommodate alien thought patterns. The knowledge exchange advanced both civilizations simultaneously. Breakthroughs occurred weekly through combined insights. The collaboration produced technologies neither species could have developed alone. Vexi counselors eased trauma across formerly war-torn worlds. Their empathic networks identified psychological wounds invisible to scanners. Treatment programs combined traditional therapy with psychic healing. They helped veterans process combat experiences without medication. Civilian populations learned to overcome generational fears. The recovery rate exceeded all medical predictions. Mental health became a priority rather than an afterthought. The former coalition capital became a hub of cooperative exploration. Shipyards constructed vessels blending multiple technologies. Research facilities housed scientists from hundreds of species. The location symbolized redemption through renewed purpose. Exploration missions now sought knowledge rather than conquest. Discovery focused on understanding rather than exploitation. The shift in objectives reflected deeper philosophical changes. Strength was now measured by who you saved, not who you conquered. Military power became secondary to humanitarian capability. Rescue vessels outnumbered warships in fleet registries. Emergency response teams received greater funding than combat units. The metric for civilization progress changed completely. Societies were judged by their treatment of vulnerable populations. This new standard influenced diplomatic relations and trade agreements. The transformation affected everyday life across the Republic. Public spaces incorporated multi-species accessibility features. Educational systems taught empathy alongside mathematics. Media networks highlighted collaborative projects rather than conflicts. The cultural shift was gradual but consistent. Each generation embraced the new values more completely than the last. The galaxy was becoming what many had thought impossible, a place where difference meant strength rather than threat. This new galactic order proved that sanctuary policies created stability. Protecting the vulnerable strengthened entire civilizations. Diversity produced innovation that homogeneity could never achieve. The Republic's success became its own justification. Other systems requested membership based on observed results. The model spread through demonstration rather than coercion. The approach that began with rescuing 47 ships now governed 300 worlds. The epilogue snapshots showed a galaxy rebuilt through cooperation rather than conquest. Zar the Karathi engineer became a symbol of cross-species collaboration. His crystalline form reflected light across engineering bays where multiple species worked together. He designed quantum systems that blended human and alien technologies seamlessly. His presence demonstrated that difference could create strength rather than conflict. The very traits the Coalition deemed inferior became the Republic's greatest assets. Old battle scars remained visible across some worlds. Destroyed cities were still being reconstructed. Psychological wounds required continued treatment and understanding. The healing process was ongoing but measurable. Progress was seen in daily interactions between former enemies. The work of reconciliation continued through dedicated effort. The past wasn't forgotten, but it no longer dictated the future. Lydia Bluong, the Vex High Counselor, helped coordinate peaceful governance. Her empathic abilities detected tensions before they became conflicts. She facilitated understanding between species with different communication styles. Her work emphasized addressing trauma and promoting mutual respect. She demonstrated that true peace required emotional intelligence alongside political will. Her leadership showed how sensitivity could be strategic rather than weak. Refugees became citizens, then leaders in the new republic. Their experiences with persecution informed compassionate policies. Their unique perspectives solved problems that had frustrated traditional approaches. They brought skills the galaxy had nearly lost through systematic elimination. Their contributions enriched every aspect of society from science to arts. They proved that protecting vulnerable populations strengthened entire civilizations. New ships arrived daily at Republic spaceports. They carried species once marked for extinction by coalition policies. Each arrival represented another civilization saved from oblivion. The flow continued as word spread about the sanctuary offered. The Republic's commitment to protection remained absolute and unwavering. The ports bustled with beings from hundreds of different worlds. The diversity became normal rather than remarkable. The Terra Alliance evolved into a government where innovation was collaborative. Research facilities combined multiple scientific traditions. Breakthroughs occurred through cross-species teamwork. Military technology focused on defense rather than aggression. Economic systems prioritized sustainability over exploitation. The values that began with rescuing 47 ships now guided 300 worlds. The model proved that ethical choices could create practical success. Dr. Maria Santos became the Republic's Minister of Refugee Affairs. She oversaw resettlement programs that saved countless species from extinction. Her work demonstrated that moral decisions could yield measurable results. She helped beings find new homes throughout the galaxy. Her programs became models for ethical governance. She proved that compassion could be organized into effective policy. Jake Morrison watched the busy sky from his observation post. Ships of countless designs moved in coordinated patterns. The traffic represented peace rather than threat. The diversity showed strength rather than weakness. The activity demonstrated that protection created stability. He remembered the desperate transmission that started everything. He knew humanity's choice had been difficult but right. The galaxy that once seemed cold and hostile had finally become home through courage and compassion. The galaxy that once seemed cold and hostile finally became home through shared sacrifice and cooperation. Earth's decision to shelter the cast-aside redefined galactic civilization completely. Protection replaced persecution as the foundation of governance. Difference became strength rather than weakness. The refugees became citizens, then leaders of the new era. Their unique perspectives solved problems that had once seemed impossible. Remember that true strength grows from protecting the vulnerable. Compassion creates stability, where force only builds resistance. The future belongs to those who offer shelter, not to those who build walls.